I'm Joe Duffy, CEO of OffshoreInsiders.com. On this video, we're going to take a look at some pre-March Madness betting tips, late regular season handicapping tips, especially as to how it deals with the so-called bubble teams. Now, first of all, how do we define bubble teams? We like to use one of the cheat sheets on many of the sites out there that will tell you which teams are truly on the bubble as far as the NCAA tournament. Our cheat sheet of default is the Joe Lunardi's ones on ESPN. He has the last 4 teams in, the last 4 teams out, and the next 4 teams out. So that's kind of our standard cheat sheet. But, again, by no stretch of the imagination when we're talking about this angle do we say that clearly it's black and white. These teams are bubble teams, these teams are not. As we said, it's only a cheat sheet, and we weigh factors accordingly. But as a general rule of thumb, when bubble teams are favored against non-bubble teams, we fade against them. Very simple reason why this works. If teams have done well in pressure situations, in quote-unquote must-win situations, they wouldn't be bubble teams in mid to late February and the early March when it comes to the bigger conferences where they're still in the regular season in early March. And if they are favorites, chances are they're playing to an also-ran, and that's especially when we like to go with the also-rans because, number one, the odds makers know that the public loves betting teams that, quote-unquote, need to win it more. So, therefore, you're going to have to lay a premium with those teams, and you're getting an extra point or two when you're going against the also-rans. Second of all, it's pretty basic. When you're looking for undervalued teams late in the year, there are going to be more teams at the bottom of the standings than there are going to be at the top of the standings. Also, never forget that teams don't quit. I hear one of the most overused cliches is a certain team has quit. It really does not happen. And one thing that motivates teams at the end of the year is to be a spoiler, especially if they're playing on their home court. No team wants another squad to be celebrating a big victory on their home court. Plus, these minor tournaments now, you got the CBI, the NIT, of course, the College Invitational Tournament, whatever the heck it's, College Insider Tournament. So there's at least enough of a carrot where virtually every team now plays in some type of postseason tournament. Got a little bit of carrot. Very few teams are playing out the string. That is why, again, we put a check mark to fade bubble teams when they're playing non-bubble teams, and especially if they are big favorites to squads that are also rans. Now, there is a little bit of an exception. When a bubble team is a large underdog against a team that is very likely a number 1 or 2 seed, there we kind of tend towards going with them because they've got all the motivation in the world to keep a game close. They know when it comes down to Selection Sunday, if they lost to the number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 team in the country by a 2 or 3 point margin, that can also come big on Selection Sunday. So that's actually the circumstance where we would put a check mark in the positive column of a bubble team. Now, one thing that's also very important, one of those evergreen discussions that I've had with professional gamblers, elite handicappers, is how do we weigh overall quality as compared to form? Form meaning recent play. When it does come to the end of the year, pressure-packed situations, we weigh recent form a little bit more heavily than we would at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, under other circumstances, even this time of the year. Basically, if a team is struggling in the pressure situations, we look for them to continue to struggle. Now, if a team is playing pretty well as a bubble situation, we may wind up pass. There's no advantage either way. But keep in mind, you're going to have teams that actually play their way onto the bubble. Teams that were on the outside looking in, maybe going a nice winning streak. Still, remember our golden rule. It's always easier to be the hunter than the hunted. So even teams that are playing well and play their way onto the bubble, our normal rules for the most part still apply. But again, the bubble angle is not anything that is etched in stone, black and white, but it is an important factor that has to be weighed with a bunch of other factors. Now also when it comes to totals, as a general rule of thumb, when we're talking about bubble teams, we lean a little bit more towards the under because on offense there's going to be some angst, but intensity always shows up more on the defensive end. So in a big game, that means a lot, especially if you got two bubble teams. Might be some nervousness on the offensive end. They'll show in sloppy plays, but there will be strong defensive intensity. So this is just one of those extra angles that we weigh, but again, do not overweigh. We don't make many picks based purely on whether a team is in a bubble situation, the pressure's on them, etc. But it's most definitely something that corroborates all of our other factors. Now, once March Madness starts, we've got a lot of other angles. We'll talk about that in future videos. Whether it's before March Madness, after March Madness, baseball season, football season, the #1 source for winners is always going to be offshoreinsiders.com. And again, my picks, Joe Duffy, CEO of Offshore Insiders. I'm part of the dream team of God's Tips, but if you read our handicapper profiles, you'll see where I went out, and our website, offshoreinsiders.com, is built on first and foremost getting the best handicappers and allowing everything else to fall into place. So from the Canadian crew to Matt Rivers, who was the winningest handicapper on a large network of sites elsewhere before he made the jump to the show here. The Master Lock Line, which traces its roots back to the Super Lock Line when we were on the score phone, and even before that, the 976 Lock Line. All that and more is at offshoreinsiders.com.